Welcome back to the channel. I wanted to do something I have been wanting to do for a very long time, to share how many of us, even the world, really feels or felt about the greatest Muhammad Ali. There have been many great tributes and documentaries and him movies and so many other well-deserved pieces on him, but I wanted to do mine to Seder off no matter how you felt about him. You could never question his character. His manhood stood as a symbol all men could follow, no matter what color you were. You see, Ali stood for something bigger than himself. He never held his tongue when it came to injustice. He gave a damn. He didn't walk around flashing his money for everyone to see and bragging how much he made. Muhammad was much more than those petty men. Think about this. His courage was unmatched. Who else can say that? Ali refused to go to war and murder people he never seen before. And he told the world that in a time that's seen black folks being lynched and murdered, he refused to be used by the same system who promoted and stood by and watched the crimes committed against other human beings. He didn't run to Canada or get deferments because his parents were wealthy like some cowards. We con all so well. He said no and was sent to prison. Like I said, his character. Boxing has never seen anything or anyone like him, not even till this day. So when some clown comes along and try to say they are the greatest, I just laugh. Ali stands with the likes of all great men who stood for something besides themselves. Muhammad Ali, thanks for showing all men how to be men of character. With that said, let's talk about him in depth. Muhammad Ali, born January 17, 1942, Louisville, Kentucky, U.S., died June 3, 2016, Scottsdale, Arizona, was an American professional boxer and social activist. Considered one of the greatest boxers in history, Ali was the first fighter to win the World Heavyweight Championship on 3 separate occasions. He successfully defended this title 19 times. Early life in 1960 Olympics. Cassius Marcellus Clay, Jr. grew up in the American South in a time of segregated public facilities. His father, Cassius Marcellus Clay, Sr., supported a wife and 2 sons by painting billboards and signs. His mother, Odessa Grady Clay, worked as a household domestic. When Clay was 12 years old, he took up boxing under the tutelage of Louisville policeman Joe Martin. After advancing through the amateur ranks, he won a gold medal in the 175-pound division at the 1960 Olympic Games in Rome and began a professional career under the guidance of the Louisville Sponsoring Group, a syndicate composed of 11 wealthy white men. In his early bouts as a professional, Clay was more highly regarded for his charm and personality than for his ring skills. He sought to raise public interest in his fights by reading childlike poetry and spouting self-descriptive phrases such as float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. He told the world that he was the greatest, but the hard realities of boxing seemed to indicate otherwise. Clay infuriated devotees of the sport as much as he impressed them. He held his hands unconventionally low, backed away from punches rather than bobbing and weaving out of danger, and appeared to lack true knockout power. The opponents he was besting were a mixture of veterans who were long past their prime and fighters who had never been more than mediocre. Thus, purists cringed when Clay predicted the round in which he intended to knock out an opponent, and they grimaced when he did so and bragged about each new conquest. On February 25, 1964, Clay challenged Sonny Liston for the heavyweight championship of the world. Liston was widely regarded as the most intimidating, powerful fighter of his era. Clay was a decided underdog, but in one of the most stunning upsets in sports history, Liston retired to his corner after 6 rounds, and Clay became the new champion. 2 days later, Clay shocked the boxing establishment again by announcing that he had accepted the teachings of the Nation of Islam. On March 6, 1964, he took the name Muhammad Ali, which was given to him by his spiritual mentor, Elijah Muhammad. For the next 3 years, Ali dominated boxing as thoroughly and magnificently as any fighter ever had. In a May 25, 1965 rematch against Liston, he emerged with a first-round knockout victory. Triumphs over Floyd Patterson, George Chuvalo, Henry Cooper, Brian London, and Carl Mildenberger followed. On November 14, 1966, Ali fought Cleveland Williams. Over the course of 3 rounds, Ali landed more than 100 punches, scored 4 knockdowns, and was hit a total of 3 times. Ali's triumph over Williams was succeeded by victories over Ernie Terrell and Zora Fali. Refusing the Vietnam War draft, then on April 28, 1967, citing his religious beliefs, Ali refused induction into the U.S. Army at the height of the war in Vietnam. This refusal followed a blunt statement voiced by Ali 14 months earlier, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong." Many Americans vehemently condemned Ali's stand, though one of Ali's earliest defenders was famed sports broadcaster Howard Cosell, who had covered and praised the fighter since the beginning of his career as Cassius Clay. Ali's position was especially controversial because it came at a time when most people in the United States still supported the war in Southeast Asia. Moreover, although exemptions from military service on religious grounds were available to qualifying conscientious objectors who were opposed to war in any form, Ali was not eligible for such an exemption, because he acknowledged that he would be willing to participate in an Islamic holy war. Ali was stripped of his championship and precluded from fighting by every state athletic commission in the United States for 3.5 years. In addition, he was criminally indicted and, on June 20, 1967, convicted of refusing induction into the U.S. Armed Forces and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Although he remained free on bail, 4 years passed before his conviction was unanimously overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court on a narrow procedural ground. Meanwhile, as the 1960s grew more tumultuous, Ali's impact upon American society was growing, and he became a lightning rod for dissent. Ali's message of black pride and black resistance to white domination was on the cutting edge of the civil rights movement. Having refused induction into the U.S. Army, he also stood for the proposition that unless you have a very good reason to kill, war is wrong. As black activist Julian Bond later observed, when a figure as heroic and beloved as Muhammad Ali stood up and said, "No, I won't go," it reverberated through the whole society. Return to boxing: Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, and George Foreman. In October 1970, Ali was allowed to return to boxing, but his skills had eroded. The legs that had allowed him to dance for 15 rounds without stopping no longer carried him as surely around the ring. His reflexes, while still superb, were no longer as fast as they had once been. Ali prevailed in his first 2 comeback fights against Jerry Quarry and Oscar Bonavena. Then, on March 8, 1971, he challenged Joe Frazier, who had become heavyweight champion during Ali's absence from the ring. It was a fight of historic proportions, billed as the fight of the century. Frazier won a unanimous 15-round decision. Following his loss to Frazier, Ali won 10 fights in a row, 8 of them against world-class opponents. Then, on March 31, 1973, a little-known fighter named Ken Norton broke Ali's jaw in the second round en route to a 12-round upset decision. Ali defeated Norton in a rematch. After that, he fought Joe Frazier a second time and won a unanimous 12-round decision. From a technical point of view, the second Ali-Frazier bout was probably Ali's best performance in the ring after his exile from boxing. On October 30, 1974, Ali challenged George Foreman, who had dethroned Frazier in 1973 to become heavyweight champion of the world. The bout, which Ali referred to as the Rumble in the Jungle, took place in the unlikely location of Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Ali was received by the people of Zaire as a conquering hero, and he did his part by knocking out Foreman in the 8th round to regain the heavyweight title. It was in this fight that Ali employed a strategy once used by former boxing great Archie Moore. Moore called the maneuver the turtle, but Ali called it rope-a-dope. The strategy was that, instead of moving around the ring, Ali chose to fight for extended periods of time leaning back into the ropes in order to avoid many of Foreman's heaviest blows. Last bouts. Over the next 30 months, at the peak of his popularity as champion, Ali fought 9 times in bouts that showed him to be a courageous fighter, but a fighter on the decline. The most notable of these bouts occurred on October 1, 1975, when Ali and Joe Frazier met in the Philippines, 6 miles, 9.5 kilometers outside Manila, to do battle for the 3rd time. In what is regarded by many as the greatest prize fight of all time, the Thrilla in Manila, Ali was declared the victor when Frazier's corner called a halt to the bout after 14 brutal rounds. The final performances of Ali's ring career were sad to behold. In 1978, he lost his title to Leon Spinks, a novice boxer with an Olympic gold medal, but only 7 professional fights to his credit. 7 months later, Ali regained the championship with a 15-round victory over Spinks. Then he retired from boxing. But 2 years later, he made an ill-advised comeback and suffered a horrible beating at the hands of Larry Holmes in a bout that was stopped after 11 rounds. The final ring contest of Ali's career was a loss by decision to Trevor Berbick in 1981. Later activities and legacy. Ali's place in boxing history as one of the greatest fighters ever is secure. His final record of 56 wins and 5 losses with 37 knockouts has been matched by others, but the quality of his opponents and the manner in which he dominated during his prime placed him on a plateau with boxing's immortals. Ali's most tangible ring assets were speed, superb footwork, and the ability to take a punch. But perhaps more important, he had courage and all the other intangibles that go into making a great fighter. Ali's later years were marked by physical decline. Damage to his brain caused by blows to the head resulted in slurred speech, slowed movement, and other symptoms of Parkinson's syndrome. However, his condition differed from chronic encephalopathy or dementia pugilistica, which is commonly referred to as punch drunk in fighters, in that he did not suffer from injury-induced intellectual deficits. Ali's religious views also evolved over time. In the mid-1970s, he began to study the Quran seriously and turned to Orthodox Islam. His earlier adherence to the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, e.g., that white people are devils and there is no heaven or hell, were replaced by a spiritual embrace of all people and preparation for his own afterlife. In 1984, Ali spoke out publicly against the separatist doctrine of Louis Farrakhan, declaring, "What he teaches is not at all what we believe in. He represents the time of our struggle in the dark and a time of confusion in us, and we don't want to be associated with that at all." In 1996, Ali was chosen to light the Olympic flame at the start of the Games of the 2016 Olympiad in Atlanta, Georgia. The outpouring of goodwill that accompanied his appearance confirmed his status as one of the most beloved athletes in the world. The dramatic period of his life from 1964 to 1974 was the basis of the film Ali, 2001, in which Will Smith starred as the boxer. His life story is told in the documentary film I Am Ali, 2014, which includes audio recordings that he made throughout his career and interviews with his intimates. He also was the subject of the docuseries What's My Name, 2019, and Muhammad Ali, 2021, the latter of which was co-directed by Ken Burns. Ali was a member of the inaugural class of the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990, and in 2005 he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Personal life. Ali married his 4th wife, Lonnie, née Yolanda Williams, in 1986. He had 9 children, most of whom avoided the spotlight of which Ali was so fond. One of his daughters, however, Layla Ali, pursued a career as a professional boxer, during which she went undefeated in 24 bouts between 1999 and 2007 while capturing a number of titles in various weight classes. Rumble in the Jungle, heavyweight boxing match held on October 30th, 1974, between then heavyweight champion George Foreman and Muhammad Ali in Kinshasa, Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The fight was attended by 60,000 people and watched on television by as many as 1 billion worldwide. Though Foreman entered the bout as the clear favorite, Ali won by knockout in the 8th round and reclaimed the world heavyweight title. By 1974, Muhammad Ali had successfully returned to boxing after being ousted for his 1967 conscientious objection to the Vietnam War and having his license reinstated in 1970. In October 1970, for his first post-exile fight, Ali faced Jerry Quarry in Atlanta, defeating him in 3 rounds. By March 1971, Ali had returned to relative form, earning a heavyweight championship bout against Joe Frazier in what would be dubbed in promotional materials as the fight of the century. Ali lost by unanimous decision in a close fight. Undeterred, he fought 14 matches over the next 3.5 years, winning 13 and losing 1. George Foreman arrived in Zaire at the height of his prowess. He had won the heavyweight gold medal at the 1968 Mexico City Olympics before turning professional and winning his first 37 fights. Foreman then beat the theretofore undefeated Frazier handily, needing only 2 rounds to unseat the champion. Foreman was seen as a foil for Ali. He was taciturn where the former champion was cocky, plotting, and powerful where Ali was quick-footed. Furthermore, Foreman was marketed as a patriot, while Ali was a noted black nationalist. In an Olympics best remembered for the Black Power protests of Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Foreman had waved a U.S. flag following his medal ceremony. Coming into the Rumble in the Jungle, Foreman was seen as an unstoppable power and Ali as an aging superstar. Betting lines were set accordingly. Ali was a 4-1 underdog. The Rumble in the Jungle was conceived by Don King, a former numbers runner whose only previous association with boxing had been a brief promotion stint for a charity exhibition. He promised $5 million paychecks to both Foreman and Ali for their participation in the fight, then record sums. However, King did not have the money, so he needed to find someone to finance his plan. He found his sponsor in Mobutu Sese Seko, Zaire's dictator. Mobutu hoped that hosting Africa's first heavyweight championship would draw international attention and investment to the fledgling state. King marketed the bout as a Back to Africa event. He had initially dubbed the fight From the Slave Ship to the Championship before Mobutu rejected the title. Rumble in the Jungle was a phrase Ali had coined during training. As part of the fight's promotion, a 3-day music festival was held that featured performances by B.B. King, James Brown, and Miriam Makeba, among others. The organization of the live event was fraught with issues. The fight was initially scheduled to take place on September 25th, but had to be postponed after Foreman's eye was cut during a sparring session. As a result, the fighters were forced to stay in Zaire for an additional 5 weeks. Furthermore, much to King's disappointment, fewer than 50 high-paying foreign fight fans were in the crowd, as the majority of seats had been sold to locals, who could only afford to sit far from the ring. The most money was made in selling television rights to venues in other markets. Worldwide, more than $100 million was brought in from the closed circuit and broadcasting sales. The fight lived up to its billing. It began at 4 a.m. local time. The early start accommodated American viewers, who could then watch the fight during prime time. In Kinshasa's 20th of May Stadium, now Stade Tata Raphael. Many expected Ali to approach the fight as he had the bouts of his youth, with quick footwork and finesse. Indeed, Ali had told the press before the fight that he would attack Foreman this way. However, Ali came out with a much slower, more methodical approach. In the first round, he attacked Foreman ferociously before retreating to the ropes and allowing his opponent to throw punches and gradually tire himself out, a tactic since dubbed rope-a-dope. Ali blocked and dodged many of Foreman's strikes in these early rounds, but sustained several arm and body blows. Eventually, Ali's strategy paid off. By the 5th round, Foreman had begun to visibly tire. In the 8th, Ali saw his chance and went on the attack, knocking Foreman out with a combination of quick punches, shocking his opponent and the world. Ali became the second man ever to reclaim the heavyweight title. In the aftermath of the Rumble in the Jungle, as the Vietnam War came to a close, Ali's public image began to be rehabilitated, and he was an American icon at the time of his death. If you heard this to the end, I guess you understand why I had to make this for myself. Thanks for listening. Until next time, be good.